A random man walked into my apartment last night while I was sleeping. First off, I feel incredibly stupid saying this, but my front door was mistakenly left unlocked. Both myself and my boyfriend thought the other person locked it when we came inside. I almost always double check before bed to make sure it's locked, but I was running on 3 hours of sleep and it very much unfortunately slipped my mind. That being said, to make things clear, my boyfriend works nights, so he's almost always awake during the night and sleeps during the day. I work days, so my sleep schedule is nearly opposite. Every Saturday morning, I load up our 2 baskets of laundry into my car and wash it at my mom's house since she lives close to where I work and our apartment complex doesn't have a washer or dryer. I specifically do it every Saturday because it's the only day of the week I get out of work in the morning and have time to do it, so it works out well. I have Sundays off but like to stay home that day, and since my mom's house is nearby work, it's not an issue. I called my boyfriend on my way home and chatted with him during my drive and ended up getting the 2 of us Taco Bell for dinner. He came outside when I arrived home at about 6 p.m. to help me carry everything inside. Like I mentioned, we were both distracted by food and carrying everything that we both forgot to lock the door upon coming back inside. Oftentimes I carry everything inside alone since he's usually still sleeping. We both ate dinner and then went to our bedroom to lay down. He fell right back asleep, but I was awake for a couple of hours playing my Switch. At about 8 p.m., I got up and put my Switch away and passed out very soon after in bed with him. My boyfriend got out of bed approximately an hour or 2 after I fell asleep and went into our computer rooms so he could play some games himself. I have no idea how I slept through all of this, but it's so horrifying to think about. He said he heard a small knock on our door, and then immediately a man walked into our front door living room. The computer room where my boyfriend was sitting is directly down the hallway from the living room, so he stood up out of his chair and started walking toward the man and loudly said, "What are you doing? Who are you?" Meanwhile, I'm asleep in the bedroom right off from the same hallway he was walking down to get to the living room front door area. I vaguely remember hearing him say, "What are you doing?" But I thought he was talking to our cat, so I passed right back out, shaking my head. My boyfriend said the guy was wearing a face mask pulled down and he was stumbling over his words and said something along the lines of, "I'm supposed to be here." They said just knock and come in, and my boyfriend told him to get out and that he had the wrong place, and the guy backed off into the hallway of our apartment complex. The guy also said something like, "They told me room number 350 or something, but I couldn't find it." They wouldn't give me an exact address, and my boyfriend threatened to call the police if he didn't leave, and thank God he left. Personally, I think he should have called the police anyways, but I'm not sure what good it would do at this point. I know I'm probably being completely paranoid, but I keep thinking about what if this man thought I was home alone, since my boyfriend used to work every Saturday right until quite recently. Our curtains in the bedroom were cracked, and he would have seen me sleeping in bed and thought I was alone. The way he was stumbling over his words, trying to come up with a reason he walked right into our apartment, does not sit right with me at all, especially if he said they wouldn't give him an exact address. Then why would he have went directly to our door? My boyfriend didn't hear him trying random doors or jiggling our neighbors' handles to see if they were unlocked. At night, our complex is very quiet, and we can hear whenever someone down the hall opens a door, etc. So it seems as if he went directly to our door. What if he knows my routine? I know he could have been genuinely telling the truth and was supposed to meet up with someone, but the whole thing has me so freaked out. How am I not going to overthink this in today's world as a woman? What if he didn't even knock, but my boyfriend thought he did and it matched his story? I keep thinking about what if my boyfriend wasn't home? I would have slept right through this man opening our door. Who knows what he could have done? I like to think that I'm normally very cautious, but I'm definitely going to only load up my laundry in my car when it's light outside, even if that means loading it up the day before. I feel so unsafe, and I'll be talking to my landlord about this. I know there's nothing he can do about it, but I would feel wrong not making him at least aware of the situation in case it happens to someone else. I recently just moved into a new apartment with my boyfriend. We've been living here for a few months now. I was really excited to move out because my old apartment was really old and falling apart, and I hated my neighbors, so I was really looking forward to moving. When we first moved into the apartment, something seemed off right from the start. It felt like someone was watching me when I was in the shower or in a room by myself, or I would hear footsteps in a room that no one was in. I didn't think much of it, just thought it was my imagination getting to me being in a new apartment. Now, I don't really believe in the paranormal, but after this incident, I'm starting to believe that we're not the only ones living here. My boyfriend was at work when this happened to me. I've been watching scary movies all day, so I was a bit scared to be in the new apartment alone. I was sitting on my bed watching a scary movie with my 2 cats when I heard a knock. I thought it was just in the movie, so I kept watching when I heard it again, only this time it was a bit louder. I paused my show and went to go check if my boyfriend got home early and locked him out by accident. I went to check my front door, but he wasn't there. I went back to my room and saw that my cat Nova was looking at something. She was staring at the closet with wide eyes. You should know that my cat is a very friendly cat, and I had her for a year. And she's the most lovable cat and never ever showed any aggression towards me or my boyfriend. Nova was hissing and meowing very loud at the closet door. I was really scared after I saw her act this way because I've never seen her act like that before. I just tried to calm her down and pet her the best I could. When I looked over to the closet, I saw it shaking as if someone was holding the door handles really tight and shaking it up and down really fast. I was freaked out at this point, and I froze because I couldn't believe what I just saw. And it wasn't just me, both my cats were acting strange. Nova was in the middle of the bed, looking around, still hissing and meowing like crazy. Her head was moving side to side as if someone was walking around the bed. When I told my boyfriend about this, he was a bit freaked out, and then he told me that he too also felt as if someone was watching him when he was in the shower. And I never told him that I also felt as if someone was watching me while I was in the shower. I was telling my fiance this story earlier and decided I should write about it on here since it's pretty weird. I'm not sure if this is the right subreddit for this or not. Oh well, I'll remove it if it's not. So in 2016, when I was 18 years old, I moved to Virginia to live with my grandmother. She needed help doing basic things like laundry, dishes, sweeping, etc. I had a rough life at home, and I viewed living up north with my grandma as an opportunity to have a fresh start. I can get a new job, make new friends, and be closer to my family who lives there. I found a job almost immediately at a small local grocery store. This was a very small town, everybody pretty much knew everybody. Which was an adjustment for me because I was used to living in a big city. And while working at this grocery store, I had multiple people come up to me and tell me they knew my family and remembered me from when I was little. Every year, while I was growing up, my family and I would come to this small town in Virginia because it's where my mom is from and most of my family never left. Also, my family is pretty big and they know a lot of people in town, so when people say they knew me, it wasn't that shocking. I was working one night at the grocery store restocking some fresh produce when, all of a sudden, a man behind me said something. I turned around and saw this very tall, skinny man who looked to be in his earlier to mid-60s. He smiled at me and said, "You're Mindy, right?" I nodded my head yes while looking confused. I honestly had no idea who he was, but figured it was another one of my relatives' friends, or someone who remembers me from when I was little. He was shocked I didn't recognize him and then said, "I'm Ben. You don't remember me? I used to be married to your Aunt Jenny. But I guess you haven't seen me since you were about 5, so I don't blame you for not recognizing me." He didn't look familiar to me, but I did recall my Aunt Jenny telling me before she was married to a guy named Ben back in the 90s, early 2000s. But they ended up getting divorced because they didn't see eye to eye on a lot of things. I was too young to remember Ben at the time. I shook his hand and said it was nice to meet him, and then he began asking me questions like how I was adjusting to the new environment, if I'm planning on going to college that year, etc. I told him I was adjusting well and would like to attend college and go for nursing. After a couple minutes of small talk, he said, "I'll let you go. I know you need to get back to work. Tell your grandma I say hi." I didn't expect to see or hear from him again, at least not anytime soon after this first encounter. But 2 nights later, when I was at home making dinner for my grandma and I, the phone started ringing. My grandma picked it up from the living room and I could hear her saying, "Oh, hello, Ben. I haven't heard from you in ages. How you doing?" I stopped what I was doing and inched closer to the living room to hear what they were saying. I was so confused as to why Ben would be calling. After I met him at the grocery store, I told my grandma later that day about the meeting. She said she hasn't seen or heard from him in years. He lives in the next town over, so they just never crossed paths. Nobody else in my family ever heard from or saw him in years either. So him calling out of the blue was strange. I couldn't hear what Ben was saying, but I heard my grandma tell him, "Wait, you really want to do that for her? Why's that?" I had a feeling they were talking about me, and I would be correct. When my grandma got off the phone with him, she told me everything he said. Basically, Ben was a retired school principal who lived alone, had no kids, never got remarried, and had no brothers or sisters. He was all alone. His parents also recently died, and they were super rich. He inherited all their money and wanted to do good with it, which is what he told my grandma. He's given money to charity and is known around the community for doing so. But he wants to do something bigger, help someone personally with his money, and that meant he wanted to pay for my schooling so I could become a nurse. He told my grandma he knew about my rough life back home and feels like I was deserving of his help. He also mentioned he would help me get a car so I could get to and from work and school. At this time, I was walking and taking public transportation because I was trying to save up for a car. I wasn't sure what to think of this at the moment, to be honest. Like, yeah, it sounded great. Some guy who was once connected to my family wants to pay for my college and buy me a car. But I couldn't help but feel weird about the whole thing. I don't know this man at all. My grandma also felt the same, unsure of what to make of this. But I think she was looking at it more positively and more as a good thing than I was. She said before they hung up, Ben mentioned he would like to come over Saturday and have dinner with us. He offered to pick up some pizza and wings for us and we could all eat at my grandma's house. And that's just what happened. That next Saturday, Ben came over with pizza and wings, and he, my grandma, and I sat around the dinner table. At first, he was catching up with my grandma, asking about the family, and they were telling stories. Then he started talking to me. He asked what made me want to go for nursing. He started telling me the same thing my grandma had told me. He wanted to help me because he feels like I deserved it the most. He also said he would like to get me a car so it would be easier to get around. I was speechless and thanked him. He asked me if I had made any new friends in town since moving here. My grandma smiled and winked, saying, well, she met someone who's more than a friend. Ben looked over at me and said, "Oh, what does that mean?" And I said, "I met this guy who also works at the grocery store. His name is Jason. He asked me to be his girlfriend." My grandma added to that, "Yeah, and they've been inseparable ever since. He's such a great guy, and I feel like this could be the one for Mindy." Ben's whole demeanor completely changed after what we said. He went from smiling and being very talkative to quiet and out of nowhere saying, "I have to go." My grandma and I were confused. He still had a lot of food on his plate, and the timing seemed weird. We were in the middle of dinner. He also brought dessert, which we were planning to eat after dinner. My grandma said to him, "Wait, why are you leaving? You barely ate any food. Is something wrong?" He continued to put on his coat and grab his shoes and just saying, "No, I just need to leave. I didn't realize the time." My grandma was following him to the front door, looking so confused and kept repeating, "Is something wrong?" He finished putting on his shoes and left out of the front door quickly. I remember my grandma and I just stood there looking at each other like, what just happened? We sat in the living room and tried to make sense of what this whole thing was about. The next day, my grandma tried to give him a call and see if he was alright, but he forwarded her call to voicemail. I never saw or heard from him ever again. I thought about this more and more, especially as I got older. The weirder it became to me. The only conclusion I could come to was he wanted a sugar baby type relationship with me. And the creepy part is, during the dinner I remember him saying something along the lines of, "Doesn't Mindy look so much like Jenny?" Jenny is my aunt, who he was married to. I think when Ben found out my boyfriend, it freaked him out. My boyfriend lived with his father during this time, and they were very popular within the community. They both went to church, regularly hosted charity events, and really brought the community together. I think Ben was fully aware of that. Like I said, I told my fiancé this story. Yes, my boyfriend from this story and I got engaged. And he was creeped out. I don't think I told him any of this when we were first dating. The most disturbing part about this whole thing was that I was only 18 and he was mid to late 60s.